So Five Nights at Freddy's came out, and despite all the hype that was around this movie, it was really bad. I'm not someone that loves to nitpick movies, and believe me, there's a lot to say about this movie. However, I want everyone to understand that while this movie is bad, this is still one of the better video game adaptations that we've seen in the last couple of years. We've seen Uncharted, which was really bad, Mortal Kombat, which was okay, and then Sonic the Hedgehog, which was really bad. And despite dozens of others, this is still not the worst video game adaptation that's been turned into a movie. Now, is it bad? Absolutely. And I have a lot of things to say about it. But I don't want people discrediting everything that was done in this movie, because while it is really bad, this is not the worst one. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie. So my expectations going into this movie was that it was going to be a cheap looking movie version of the game, and that's pretty much what we got. I didn't know if this was going to be more of a scary horror version of what we've seen in the trailers. Instead, we got a lot of drama mixed with goosebumps level horror, I guess. Now, I watched this movie alone and I didn't get scared once. I didn't really think it was scary at all. Now, yeah, they make a lot of scenes try to look scary, but I think once you've played the game, you kind of understand how the animatronics work and all of that, so you can pretty much know what's going to happen. Now, of course, the big thing going into the movie was thinking, okay, security guard was either going to survive the night or he was going to die, and that's basically it. Now, of course, they did decide to add a lot of extra things to this movie, and I gotta say, I'm not a big fan of them. Now, if this movie was strictly about just a security guard trying to survive 6 nights in a row, I'm sure they could have pulled it off better, and honestly, it probably would have been a better movie. However, during the nights with Mike the security guard, there was a lot of times where a night might last 3 to 5 minutes. It was not really long at all. You could actually skip 5 minutes and be in an entirely different scenery, a completely different story, and that's pretty much what it was. I actually winded up skipping a little bit in the middle, and I actually found out that I missed nothing, and a night barely lasted 5 minutes. And that's adding in all the extra lore and pretty much every other plot device they had. Now, of course, I'm not like 12, I don't really care that much about Five Nights at Freddy's. However, having played the game since I was a kid, it is kind of odd to see people react the way they did with this movie. I don't really think you can actually judge this movie on a big scale. You have people giving it like a 29% on Rotten Tomatoes, which who actually looks at Rotten Tomatoes? But I find it very odd that almost every single person that really hated this movie seems to be like 50 years old. Now, I'm not saying younger people liked the movie better, but I do think that the older people that did watch this movie decided they didn't really like it just from the get-go and just kind of said that it was bad. Because believe me, like I said, this is a bad movie, but this is not the worst movie that we've seen this year, and they're rating it below a lot of really bad movies. I mean, you're telling me Saw X got a 79% on Rotten Tomatoes? The movie was good, but it was not that good. I think the critics ruined this movie. People, including myself, going into this, thought it was going to be bad, and while I did keep a very open mind, I did think this was a bad movie. Now, within the first half of the movie, the plot was actually pretty decent. However, the more and more that you watch this movie, you kind of realize the plot, and including the story, is very off-centered. None of it is really making sense, especially when it comes to later on in the movie. And then, of course, they decide to add in a lot of extra things that, like I said earlier, really ruin this movie. Not only is Freddy Fazbear active outside of the place where he usually is, he's also haunting people's dreams. Okay. And like I said, I understand where it's coming from because this was trying to be an expanded version of Five Nights at Freddy's in a movie form, and I get that. And of course, with a very messy story and plot, the pacing is not going to be very good, and it was really bad. I think that the only person that really stood out of everyone was Mike, and of course Vanessa the cop. Mike, throughout the story, takes a very high and low dip and then just kind of stays there throughout the movie. And it makes it kind of distracting realizing that throughout the whole movie, he just had a bad job. That's pretty much all. So, I mean, with all that being said, is it the worst movie I've ever seen? No. Is it really good? No. And with all that being said, it's a very weird movie. It's like a solid 3 out of 10.